Thank you, Shoma. You've really painted the canvas very, very large and extremely colorful. I think I'll certainly come back to media, leadership, and leadership with looking at the class character of the movement. But I still want to particularly take this question to Sandeep. This classic debate about, and I was at times pretty disturbed. Just to say where I was constantly working with NCBRI. But I was also at times fairly disturbed that representative democracies has been extremely limited in this country. And whenever there has been an attempt, and in some ways there were certainly idioms which were problematic, but in some ways this was trying to say that we want to enlarge the space for substantive democracy. So somehow, a lot of us kept saying that it is procedural democracy that we need to stick to. And as you said, people who've really been critiquing the state had to speak for the state. So, इसमें संदीप आपको क्या लगता है मसला जो है रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी की बहुत सीमाएं और मतलब उसको आप कॉर्पोरेट डेमोक्रेसी के रूप में लोग देखते हैं मतलब आश्चर्यचकित हो जाते हैं हम लोग कई दफ़े कि आपके संसद में हम लोगों की संसद में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट रजिस्टर नहीं होता है इतने बड़े उद्योगपति वहाँ पहुँच गए हैं तो क्या वो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी से ना उम्मीदगी हो रही है हम लोग और इसलिए लोग इस तरह की एक डेमोक्रेसी की कल्पना करते
हैं बहुत मायने में जो आप कह रहे हो सही कह रहे हो और ये मैं नहीं कहूँगा कि सीमित हुई है लेकिन रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी की जो सीमाएं हैं हम उसमें बहुत बंद हैं कुछ तो देखिए इस आंदोलन से सिर्फ इस आंदोलन से नहीं और भी जो आंदोलन रहे हैं उनसे एक चीज़ जो हम लोगों ने अपनी प्रणाली में बदलने की नहीं सोची है वो ये है कि इस समय क्या आपकी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी आप एक सामान्य साधारण सांसद को ले लीजिए मेरा देश की नीति बनाने में देश के कानून निर्धारण करने में देश की संस्थाओं का निर्माण करने में देश की संस्थाओं को बदलने में उनके चरित्र को उनके संस्कारों उनकी संस्कृति में बदलाव लाने में कोई हस्तक्षेप न था न शायद आज है न आगे चल के रहेगा बल्कि और सीमित होता जाएगा। दूसरा क्या हो रहा है कि जो तमाम बदलाव आ रहे हैं वो बदलाव खुद तो संगठनों से या आक्रोश से या अलग अलग समाजों से जो बात वो लोग निकल कर आती है उनके लिए कुछ करने के लिए निकलते हैं तो बाकी जितने हैं और जितने संगठित संस्थाएं हैं चाहे उसमें उद्योग हो उसमें ट्रेड हो उसमें ज़मीन से जुड़े हुए संगठन हो या ज़मीन से का इस्तेमाल करने वाली कारखाने हों या माइनिंग राइट्स के लोग हों वो लोग लाते हैं उसमें भी जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स हैं उनकी आवाज़ सीमित है और इसलिए हम कहा कि अगर हमें रिप्रेजेंटेटिव संस्थाओं को और सशक्त बनाना तो आपको किस तरीके से वो अपने काम करते हैं वो किस तरीके से लोगों की आवाज़ों को अपने अंदर में समाकर उसको संसद में डालते हैं या संसद से जुड़ी हुई संस्थाओं को चाहे राज्य की सरकारें हों संसदें हों चाहे राष्ट्र की हों उस पर उस बात को ला सके ट्रूली एक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव बनकर हम काम कर सकें उसकी तरफ ढकेलना पड़ेगा। आज हम केवल आधे समय तो हम सरकारी कार्यकलापों के को सुधारने में जुड़े रहते हैं और बाकी आधे समय राजनीति में जुड़े तो जो सही हमारा मकसद था वो मकसद तो एक तरीके से खत्म हो चुका है। तो अगर आप उसको रीडिफाइन नहीं करेंगे तो स्लोली वी विल मूव टुवर्ड्स ग्रेटर रेलेवेंस ऑफ आवर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव इंस्टीट्यूशंस however important they may be, however important electoral politics may be, but electoral politics will then our role will get restricted to ensuring that we ensure who the prime minister is. Beyond that our role becomes very very limited. दूसरी लेकिन मैं एक बात आपसे जरूर कहूँगा बता दीजिए जो आपने सबसे पहला सवाल पूछा था कि इज इट ट्रूली अ रेवोल्यूशन और इज इट नॉट उसमें तो मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूँ दैट ओनली टाइम पे क्योंकि कोई भी बदलाव या कोई भी क्रांति जो है सिर्फ इस पे क्रांति से आप उसको नहीं निर्धारित कर सकते कि क्या वो अपने मकसद को कायम करने में सफल रही थी लेकिन वो क्या क्या बदलाव लाई थी। अगर ये अन्ना जी उनके समर्थक सिर्फ एक बिल के बाद अपने आप को शांत कर लेते हैं, तो आई थिंक इट्स अ फेल्ड मूव। क्योंकि उसको आप समझ लें कि एक एक्ट के बाद आप जो करना चाहते कर दिया, तो फिर अगर आपका दायरा या आपकी दृष्टि सीमित है तो फिर आपका आंदोलन भी सीमित है। लेकिन अगर उससे हमारे सोचने की प्रणाली में बदलाव आएगा, जिस तरीके से राजनीतिक संगठन, राजनीतिक दल, राजनीतिक नेता अपने निर्णय लेते हैं उसमें बदलाव आएगा, किस तरह से इंसान में, समाज में और संगठनों के बीच में संवाद है उसमें बदलाव आएगा, क्या आप जैसे लोगों का उसमें आवाज़ आने में और जो जिसको डिस्कोर्स कहते हैं, डिबेट कहते हैं, उसमें ज़्यादा जोर तरीके से आपकी सहभागिता बढ़ेगी, तो फिर बदलाव जो है देन इट्स ट्रूली अ रिवॉल्यूशन। इट मे बी अ साइलेंट वन, इट मे बी अ लॉन्ग टर्म वन, बट देन आई वुड कॉल yes, probably that was a revolution.
Okay, thanks Sandeep. I want to now go back to the question of leadership. और खासकर इस मैं procedural democracy पर कुछ सवाल उठा रहा था, but now I would talk in favor of procedural democracy. That a lot of people thought that during this entire movement, जिस तरह से we the people को प्रस्तुत किया गया, almost juxtaposing them against there's nothing. और इस पूरे आंदोलन के दौरान obviously बहुत से लोगों को लगा कि it's a very urban led movement, upper caste led movement, तो इसमें we the people as a unitary bloc against the minority rights. मैंने इसी उदाहरण को अगर गुजरात में देखें, जो गुजरात को जिस तरह से बिल्ड कर दिया गया है गुजराती, जिसमें माइनॉरिटी राइट्स का अधिकार है, तो हर जी यहाँ इस पूरे लीडरशिप पर जो बड़ा सवाल है, पर मैं दो बातें और कहना चाहूँगा। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, आई हैव इमेंस रिस्पेक्ट फॉर निवेदिता मेनन, एंड एक लाइन उनकी बार बार मेरे दिमाग में आती रहती है कि उन्होंने लिखा कि अगर हम सब इंतज़ार करते रहें, if we all keep waiting for a movement which does not have a single wife beater, then all the feminists would always be in the waiting. तो एक तरफ निवेदिता जी वो कह रही हैं, और दूसरी तरफ इस पूरे मूवमेंट का जिसका आप तीनों ने कहा, जिस तरह से योगेंद्र यादव कहते ही हैं कि इट इज़ पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ एंटी पॉलिटिक्स. सो इज दैट व्हाट वी आर लुकिंग एट? सो इसमें लीडरशिप कहाँ से आया, कैसा आया, और माइनॉरिटीज़ का सवाल है. दलित ग्रुप्स के साथ हम लोग इतना काम करते हैं, उनकी नाराज़गी और उनके जो शिकायतें थी, जो नाराज़गियाँ थी, वो कभी मीडिया में नज़र भी नहीं आई.
बहुत सारे सवाल आपने उठाए और जायज़ है. आई थिंक द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ अ डेमोक्रेसी क्वाइट क्लियरली इज नॉट just about how much it reflects the will of the majority, but how it protects the rights of minorities. And that is one of the many reasons why dissent outside the formal electoral system is a necessary complement. But it should never be forged on one or the other. But when civil society movements itself start claiming representation, which is bad enough, but exclusive representation. And I just recall one of the most prominent leaders of the movement. I happened to be in a television debate, which I went to with great sense of duty, because at that time it was particularly fractious. But this, she said at one point, we represent the voice of the people, after all. And I said, with all due respect, you represent a voice of the people. A very important voice, certainly, but you certainly cannot represent the voice of the people. There is no such thing. And if I can represent even the voice of my own conscience accurately and authentically, I feel I would be all right, and so on. But this was, I think the humility to hear dissent, to deal with dissent when you are fighting for dissent. When you are dissenting, I think that was an important problem that got marginalized. I mean, you cannot be a mirror of that which you are opposing. You cannot yourself reflect those same questions. I found, it was about making a law. I've been involved in the drafting of 3 or 4 very crucial laws over the last 1.5 years. And I must say, the food bill, the criminal violence bill, and the लैंड एक्विजिशन बिल, आई फाउंड दैट इट वाज जो जिन्होंने विरोध किया उन्हीं की बात सुनते सुनते मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा चीज़ें समझ में आई, इट इम्प्रूव। आई मीन इट वाज, इफ आई हैड blocked myself into only a set of people who agreed with me, whatever we produced would have been even much more flawed than what existed. That's one thing. But I think that the whole, the notion of corruption has been limited. I mean, let me say this very starkly. Narendra Modi represents to many the finest traditions of good governance today. The administration is seen to be clean, it is seen to be efficient, and it is seen to have facilitated very fast and rapid growth. I teach a course at IIM Ahmedabad on poverty and governance, and the chairperson of the IIM Ahmedabad, among other people, said, and when all the industrialists went on, that why are people continuing to harp upon one unfortunate episode that happened 10 years ago? You should have the bigger picture. So I wanted to know that is a massacre a small picture in this whole story? But it was not just the events of 2002. There is no doubt that even 10 years later, Gujarat is also, whether it is the site of efficiency and great growth and all, I mean, disputable points, but let us take it that it is. It is also a site in which people, because of their religious identity, continue to live in extreme fear. They're living segregated, they're living in ghettos, they're not able to express their identities, they suffer social and economic boycott. It is also a state in which the hunger index was seen as one of the most alarming in terms of hunger. It's also a state, so these are realities. Salt pan workers, there are large segments of very, very poor and marginalized communities within Gujarat itself. So the questions I think that we need to ask are, what is our notion of a good government? And I think that I had a problem with the articulation of the Janna movement because it did not ask these questions. I can agree with Devendra that you cannot have the purity of no wife beater. But if a movement glosses over that issue, which begins to almost say in effect that that's not the central question, that we can live with, that means and ends don't matter, that you don't have to reflect on your own values, your own, that you can fight a movement against corruption without ever reflecting on your own practice. जो मध्यम वर्ग है, I feel the middle class is certainly a victim of corruption, but it is also a participant in corruption. It is also a beneficiary of corruption. The poor are only victims of corruption, and therefore there is a difference of quality when issues are raised in the middle classes and among the struggles of the poor. So what I'm trying to say is that in our battles in civil society, we need to be far more reflective of issues of injustice. I mean, somebody said, how can I go up to Veda Patkar and say, have you fought against child sexual abuse? If you don't, then you're missing out on something really important. But my answer is that I would still say to Veda Patkar that what is your suppose one of your supporters was a child sexual abuser and a very effective campaigner, what would be your attitude to them? So you might not be fighting against communism, but what is your attitude to communism in your ranks, for instance, among your supporters? And so I think that there is an aspiration for consistency. And the last thing that I want to say was that, and this is something that will be extremely controversial, but I need to say, we've had three major movements against corruption, since independence. The first was the JP movement, and it was an extraordinary movement. But it had one side effect. that it was in the JP movement that the RSS got a legitimacy and came out of the shadows. The second major movement against corruption was the VP Singh movement. And one of its side effects was that the first time that the right wing actually came to political power. The third major battle against corruption was the Anna movement. And I think its long-term impact is going to be as follows. One of its long-term impacts, probably perhaps unintended. You know, up to now we believe that what we call civil society, for want of a better word, would be broadly left liberal. That whatever its other diversities, it would be anti-communal, it would be pro-Dalit rights, it would be pro-gender justice, it would be pro-poor, in a very broad sense. The success of the Anna movement is that it pushed the whole center of gravity rightwards, that you could be fighting corruption as civil society, but have not have strong views on the issues of how you treat minorities, or on the issue of reservation, youth for equality, etc., etc. And the fact that it is legitimate to fight against corruption and yet have perspectives which were beyond the consensus that we've held on to in the last 60 years in civil society action, I think is going to be the unintended long-term impact of the Anna movement from the earlier two movements, and I think we need to reflect on that.
Dhanyavad, Hershey. I think the point that you make, I don't know why you said it's controversial, because a lot of people have talked about it, and how you see the right get legitimacy. And I'm very keen, and maybe I should have asked you this question again, but मैं संदीप से सुनना चाहता हूँ, इस पे तो शायद यहाँ कोई असहमत नहीं होगा कि एक सिविल सोसाइटी नहीं है. Civil society by definition is plural, and there are diversity of views within civil society. पर इस बार इस कैंपेन में मैं बार-बार कठिन सवाल मेरे दिमाग में जो उठते रहे, we have seen Medha ji as an inspiration, and you see NAPM as part of this campaign. You've seen you and I, Sandeep, have at times supported Ekta Parishad, और Ekta Parishad वहाँ पर मौजूद है. All India Students Association, the outfit of the CPI ML, very much there. So you have, in some ways, a very, very progressive part of the civil society sitting there, and they're also saying that this is an extremely important campaign. Is it a strategic miscalculation